support taking the appropriate steps to enforce the law.
Mr. Hrbacek, do you believe that city government should be engaged in public-private partnerships? And whether yes or no, why or why not?
It depends on the specific public-private partnership. I think people have different definitions of that. There are some that I can support, but generally speaking, I would like the market to produce the kind of results that we need. But in some cases, we have not had progress in certain areas, and we've had to look to some public-private partnerships and bringing in some partners, and it would just have to be a case-by-case basis for me.
Mr. Wright.
There's some incentive programs that would be good, but it needs to be at a fair basis. There's some times that the cities have been taking land that they're controlling the development, they control the P&Z, what it's going to be zoned as, and put a pretty heavy stakeholdership in the property. So they're going to tell us as the citizens how it's going to be developed, how it's going to be run, and the citizens not necessarily get to participate into that. It does make that a little unfair for other businesses that are coming inside of the city to participate or to bring in a quality development into there. So there's if there's some participation groups that are available, but if we're not careful, we can go so far to the left on providing what the city's controlling it. It is not allowing the market to necessarily take place.
Okay, this is a long question, so I'll listen very carefully, Mr. Hrbacek, so I don't have to repeat it. But Mr. Wright, our founding fathers gave us the greatest document for establishing a Republican rule of law government in the history of the world, our U.S. Constitution. Should you be elected to office, you will give an oath of allegiance to uphold this sacred document. So it is very important that you have a good working knowledge of it. Do you feel that you have a good basic understanding of our Constitution? And the first part of this question, with that in mind, what is the main role of the federal government?
It's sure not, as I guess way it's taught in different days, the federal government has stepped over so far. The states are no longer ruling themselves. The federal government has expanded. My understanding of the way I was educated and brought up was that the federal government was helped to, one, protect the national security, and second was to help make sure there's fair trade between the states. The states were to govern themselves and take care of themselves, and the local city government taking care of themselves. The Constitution, from family members that have died for it to 3 brother-in-laws that are still active serving in it, a sister-in-law that's serving in it, a brother-in-law that's active in the military, father-in-law that's grew in the military. These items, you know, we got family members that have lived for it and died for it, and there's a reason they did it. And, you know, to give me the choice and the freedom to sit here to be able to be in this place.
Okay, the second part of that question is, according to the Constitution, do the state and local governments have more or less power than the federal government? And explain your answer.
Is it the way? The state should have more power into it. I do not feel that the states have the power in way laws and things are getting passed nationally from what we're seeing it's pushed at the school or what pushed into a state way the state has to respond, or the federal government is pushing rules and regulations on everybody, and it's not allowed to be dictated at a state level.
But according to the Constitution, do you feel the state has more power than the federal government?
Yes, the state should have more power.
Okay. Mr. Hrbacek, I'm trying to get your name right. What is the main role of the federal government?
Well, ideally the federal government would take care of federal issues, but that's certainly not always the case. Could you repeat the second question?
according to the Constitution, do the state and local governments have more or less power than the federal government? And explain your answer.
Ideally, the local government would have the most local control, and the state government has the most control at the state level, but certainly not always the case.
Mr. Hrbacek, should the government be allowed to seize individuals' private property for use by commercial developers if they feel it is in the best interest of the community?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Wright?
No.
Okay, Mr. Wright, name your top 2 priorities for the city of Carrollton, and how do you plan to implement them?
Just hit the 2 onto there. One is to keep continuing the development as going redevelopment side of our community. That's going to help grow our tax bases into it. We need that tax base to grow. Our infrastructure has aged from water, sewer, and things like that throughout the city and parts of the city. It really needs to be brought up to code or brought up to par. Maybe not necessarily code is the proper word to use on that, but we do need to work on those items to bring up our infrastructure and get it back into it. As our city's growing and expanding, it's redeveloping in older neighborhoods, and if that infrastructure is not there, it will hinder the redevelopment of this community, just because it would be cost prohibitive for development to come into play.
You need me to repeat the question?
No, that's fine. My top 2 priorities would be quality redevelopment and top-tier public safety, and I'll take those in reverse order there. I believe we have the best first responders in the world, and I will continue to support Police Chief Redden and Fire Chief Murphy in reaching their departmental goals. In terms of quality redevelopment, we're out of land. We have to redevelop. We have some tremendous, compelling assets that I think we need to go tell the world about. Between our location, our infrastructure, specifically our highways and our rail lines, and the people we have in this community, we have a great shot, not just at redevelopment, but at some very, very high quality redevelopment. So I think a big piece of my role with this council and the leadership here will be to go what I've been doing all my life, and that's advocating for our community, which also happens to be my hometown, and that's go sell Carrollton. No one else is located in the middle of the 4th largest metropolitan area in the United States. No one else has the access to highways and rail lines like we do, and the most important asset of any community is the people, and I think we have some great people in Carrollton, Texas.
Mr. Hrbacek, would you vote for city government to pursue membership in international organizations, government bodies, non-government organizations, NGOs, such as the International Council for Local and Environmental Initiatives or Local Governments for Sustainability?
Absolutely, positively not.
Mr. Wright?
No.
Mr. Wright, there are 2 city council meetings and 2 work sessions held per month. How many city council meetings and work sessions have you attended in the last 2 years? Just give us the number.
Do you want just Carrollton? As in my business, I do development, and I'm active with a lot of cities. I've seen how a lot of other cities conducted business. So there's a nice avenue there that I'd have from working with other city managers and seeing how cities redevelop and into it. I do. So I'm usually at least 3 times a month to 4 times a month at a city council meeting, not necessarily always at Carrollton. I do. The nice thing is with Carrollton's, it is also on the web. So I do, when the cities I go to the others at this time, I do go to those and rewatch it.
Well, you don't actually take attendance at a council meeting, but in the last year, I have missed 1 council meeting. I was also there for the council retreat this year, which is one of the finest resorts that Josie Lane has to offer. Prior to that calendar year, I would guess that I had been at 12 of the 24 meetings. So if you need a number, I'm going to say 35 council meetings and work sessions in the last 2 calendar years.
American employers and schools are being presented with demands for time and space to do Islamic prayer, including providing worship sites through special rooms and time off to pray in accordance with Sharia law. How will you respond to this or similar requests for compliance with Sharia law at the city level?
I don't know that that's an issue that we can necessarily address at a local municipal level. I think we would have to follow the law.
As an aside, is our law compliant with Sharia law?
No.
I was asking Mr. Hrbacek.
Again, you know, this would be a matter that I don't know that we necessarily address in this role. I don't know this is a local municipal issue.
Mr. Wright, would you like to address that?
Yeah, I think the Sharia law does have a major conflict with our Constitution and with our city government onto that aspect. It is taking away a lot of rights from our citizens where we're afraid to stand our belief or afraid we're going to offend somebody else on trying to be politically correct, but we've almost walked over the Christian faith which our country was founded on.
Mr. Wright, have you been involved in city council issues or elections? Please explain.
Yes, I guess I can say I attempted last year. There was 4 of us in the race. So it was an interesting race into that aspect of it. Did learn a little bit more how the city government was working into it. So as that election, I was part of the election into it. I've been with other people that have run for city council and for mayors and have been supportive of those groups and worked with them to also see activities from their side, what kind of venues they are trying to push for.
This is my first pursuit of public service.
Well, after an introduction here, I will then ask the question. We the people of the U.S. endeavor to be a virtuous people. Virtue implies the possession or manifestation of moral excellence that governs our values concerning the sanctity of all life from birth until death. Honesty, trustworthiness, integrity, charity, industriousness, courage, reverence for God, country, are all qualities that help make up and comprise what we call virtue. As a people, we endeavor to elect and appoint those officials that exemplify these virtues. John Adams, our second president, stated in expressing the dangers of widespread immorality, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. What are the virtues that you feel you would bring to this elected position, and explain your core values rooted in these virtues?
My